Hey guys, Ace Antonio here from The Beat Stop, the only show about music festival news, events, and culture. And today I want to talk about one of the hottest topics in the festival world right now. Pun very much intended, because we're talking about the Fyre Festival. Now, whether you were following the events as they unfolded a couple of years ago, or you recently became familiar with it because of the documentaries that came out on Netflix and Hulu, by now you probably get the gist. It was this failed music festival on an island in the Bahamas that was promising this paradise experience that seemed too good to be true because it literally ended up being too good to be true. Basically, people got there and the luxury beachside villas turned out to be recycled disaster tents from Hurricane Matthew, and of course the infamous chef-cooked gourmet meal, which turned out to be nothing more than a cheese sandwich and a salad with no dressing, which was really kind of the photo that took it all down and exposed Fyre for the fraud that it ended up being. So, while it was oddly satisfying seeing the whole thing go up in flames, another Fyre pun for you, I think there was miraculously a silver lining within it all. So today we're gonna talk about some takeaways from the occurrence. That being said, here are 5 lessons from the Fyre Festival. But first, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications for future Beat Stop episodes. Now, let's get started. The first takeaway is the undeniable power of influencer marketing. Now, one of the most fascinating things to me when I was watching the Netflix documentary is what Billy McFarland touted as the largest coordinated influencer campaign ever. Now, I don't know if that's true. I don't know if anyone's keeping track, but they coordinated with somewhere like 60 to 70 Instagram influencers to launch the marketing of the event. And over the course of 24 hours, they got 300 million impressions, which is crazy. So just to give you some perspective, there's something like 325 million people living in the US. So just by coordinating with these Instagram models and profiles and personalities, they were able to reach most of the United States in a 24-hour period. So on a pure awareness standpoint, that is a very successful campaign. So for better or for worse, and unfortunately in this case, it was for worse, there's no denying the impact and the draw of influencer marketing in the digital age. Takeaway number 2 is there's a market. Fyre Festival ended up selling somewhere like 8,000 tickets, and they didn't even have a proof of concept, which is really impressive. And there are some real-world examples like Cabo Del Mar, which is an emerging luxury festival brand based in San Diego. They just expanded to the Cayman Islands, which will launch this year. And the rise of destination festivals like Sundara in March, which is hosted by Odessa in Mexico. It shows that people are willing to pay more for an elevated experience. Now, unfortunately, Fyre just completely crashed and burned. I think the amount of tickets sold shows that there is a market for it, and I think it's just a matter of time before somebody more capable, or at least somebody who thinks they're more capable, takes another shot at it. Lesson number 3 is festivals affect the locals. Now, this can be a force for good, such as Insomniac Events' Insomniac Cares program, which benefits Las Vegas communities and schools. Last year they raised somewhere like $350,000 for communities and schools in need. Or it can be a force for bad. In the case of Fyre Festival, on a micro level, the best example is probably Marianne Roll, who, if you watch the Netflix documentary, she was a local caterer who was hired to cater the festival, and she ended up never getting compensated for it. So she ended up giving a pretty emotional testimony explaining how she had to dip into $50,000 of her own savings just to compensate the staff, and it had a pretty drastic effect on her life. Fortunately, since the documentary, a GoFundMe has raised $150,000 for her, far surpassing the negative impact that the event had on her. But these are 2 really extreme examples, both on a good macro level or a bad micro level. But some other examples is like Coachella, right? Kind of in the middle of nowhere, and then once a year 100,000 people show up, and just to think about the implications that has for the amount of waste that's generated, the traffic impacts, the noise pollution, the positive or negative effects on local businesses. I mean, these are pretty substantial effects to consider, and I think it's really important that if you're going to festival events like these, to understand that it does have some kind of effect on the local community. Lesson number 4 is you're selling an experience. Now, I think the Fyre Festival was actually really successful in this, and you gotta hand it to them. The marketing looked beautiful, almost dreamy. I mean, I remember seeing the Instagram ads pop up as the event was being promoted in 2016, 2017. And to be honest, I was kind of hooked. I was at least curious about what it was. I mean, you know, the inspirational quotes and the hot girls and the dreamy images. I mean, it really lent itself to being able to visualize what would be experienced there, even though no real footage or photos of that event existed. And I think that's because they weren't selling the lineup or the food or the typical things that festivals normally promote. They were selling a weekend escape and a lifestyle experience. And the last takeaway is throwing a festival is really fucking hard. Now, the most frustrating thing when seeing the events unfold and recapping the Fyre Festival from the documentaries is Billy McFarland and Ja Rule. They were surrounded by people telling them to stop. Numerous times they were told, hey, this thing that you're promising people, it doesn't exist, or it's impossible, or it's just not gonna happen. Now, you know, when you think of a festival in a major city like Los Angeles, where it has infrastructure like roads and hotels and running water and power and internet and all these things, I mean, even then, it's really hard to throw a festival there. So when you're talking about an island in the middle of the ocean with very little to no infrastructure, and everything that you want from bathrooms to the stage to lodging needs to be either flown in or built, I mean, you know, when you lay it out like that, I just don't think they even scratch the surface of what they had to do to deliver what they were promising. So, you know, I think they were way in over their heads. And again, I think if it were easy or doable, somebody like a Live Nation or an AEG or an Insomniac, I feel like they would have done it. At least some people are trying now, so I guess we'll have to see how this niche of the festival industry plays out. So that's what I learned from the Fyre Festival. I want to know, did anyone else learn anything, or did you completely disagree with anything that I said? Let me know in the comments below. And again, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications for our channel for future Beat Stop episodes. Once again, I'm Mace Antonio. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.